guys, I'm Carla Murray and my husband James is behind the camera.
Hey guys!
Cool. So together, we've scoured the city for like over 25 years to find mom and pop stores tucked away on narrow side streets to large institutions found on historic avenues. And today, we're bringing you a free public workshop to help others document the stores like we do. We've held these free public workshops for several years, but this year is going to be very different because we're doing it virtually because of COVID-19. In the past, we held them in person, which we really love because then we get to meet all of you in person, but hopefully we'll be able to do that later because at the end of these workshops that we're holding online this year, we're going to hopefully have a free public exhibition at the Theater for the New City Gallery in the East Village, and then we can meet all of you guys. This is the first free public workshop. We're going to have a second one too, which we'll hold during Instagram live sessions. So you guys can ask us questions and then we can respond live to them. But for this one, we're just going to talk and kind of share with you our tips and our experience of photographing and the oral history taking, interviewing the store owners, which is something which we really love. So let's get started. Although documenting and supporting mom and pop stores has been our mission for a long time, they need our help more than ever, definitely, because of COVID-19 restrictions have virtually closed a lot of businesses. I mean, temporarily closed, but unfortunately some have permanently closed, including our beloved Gem Spa. I'm wearing their t-shirt. That was like an iconic, candy store, newspaper shop, magazine store galore that was famous for, they say anyway, that they were the first place to sell an egg cream and the iconic New York drink.
And here you go.
Oh, awesome. Vanilla egg cream. And look at that beautiful white foam. So let's give it a try. Wipe my milk mustache and I'm golden. But anyway, they sadly closed. The coronavirus shutdown was like the nail in the coffin for them. So it's really important now to help support these mom and pop shops. And with the purpose of really this workshop is for you guys to go out and photograph the stores, document them like we did, hopefully interview the owners. We're going to give you tips on that. And then we can all help support them because they really need our support now. And of course, to shop local. To us, the mom and pop store is really the backbone of each community in New York City. And each neighborhood is defined in part by their neighborhood stores. I mean, it's a place where familiar languages are spoken and where you can get foods from back home, wherever home is. And really a place where you can get to know the store owner because you go in there and they get to know you, they know your order, they can have it ready for you, and it's a friend that you can make. So, I mean, for us, documenting these for over 25 years and compiling our first book on the subject, which is Storefront: The Disappearing Face of New York, sadly, this was published in 2008. Over 80% of the 325 stores that are in this book, and you can see it's quite thick, I mean, 80% are gone now. And that was really when we wrote the introduction and in 2008, because it's 10 years worth of us photographing the stores, only 1/3 had disappeared, and now it's over 80%, and actually probably counting because in the short time that we've been planning this workshop, we sadly lost another store. So it's really important to document them. Even in our second book on the subject, our follow-up book, Storefront 2: A History Preserved, which was published in late 2015, over 30% of the stores that are in this book, which is also quite thick, have disappeared as well. So it's super important to document them while they're still in existence to help raise awareness so people can go out and shop there and support them, buy food from them, buy goods from them, and just be a great neighbor. Our our journey began photographing these mom and pop stores back when we were discovering that many were closing. I mean, this was like in the late 1990s, and we saw like how important they were to the community. Like when they closed, somehow the neighborhood didn't look the same anymore, it didn't feel the same anymore. It was like losing its uniqueness and like the very reason we were attracted to it in the first place. And even in our own neighborhood of the East Village, because like we've lived here for well over 25 years in the same apartment. I mean, sadly, we didn't think to document the ones that were in kind of like our own backyard because we kind of took them for granted. Like we always thought they would be around. And if you look, this is Gem Spa. This is what it looked like in 2001 when we documented it. And this is the whole block. Hold on, I'm going to show you because we have a pano which documents the whole entire block on 2nd Avenue from the corner of St. Mark's Place to East 7th Street. So there's St. Mark's Gem Spa, and then all of it's row after row after row next door to another of mom and pop stores. And like I said, we kind of took them for granted, but we said, wait a minute. We were going into these outlying neighborhoods and we began to notice that they were disappearing, and we said, wait, we have so many in our own backyard, we have to really step it up and start documenting them because they were beginning to close, because like in the early 2000s, that's when the price of real estate really got high, and the landlords were increasing their rent. And that's definitely the #1 reason why these stores close, is because the landlord increases the rent, and then these little mom and pop stores, they can't afford to, absorb such a huge rent increase, and they're forced to close. I mean, this is from interviewing the store owners. This isn't something like that we came up on our own. Like we would ask them, hey, what's the secret to your survival? Like we were wondering, why is one business like staying around for 100 years while another one closes? So we would ask them, what's the situation? And they would tell us, oh my God, like we only have a few years left in our lease, and we don't know what's going to happen because even if we move, the rents like in the neighborhood are so high now that we think that we'll be forced to close. And sadly, that's what began happening. So we've lost, like I said before, over 80% of the stores that are in this book are now gone, which is tragic.
And how many are there again?
And there's 325 stores in the book. I mean, and that's just a small portion of the amount that we have documented over the years, like literally thousands. You guys might remember, especially if you lived in the area in the East Village, this Mars Bar, which was like an iconic dive bar. Sadly, that's gone now.
Now it's a TD Bank.
Right, a TD Bank is in the ground floor space, but they actually destroyed the whole building. They knocked it down because they built like a luxury rental condo. And Moisha's Bake Shop, an old kosher bake shop, they closed. 2nd Avenue Deli was forced to close. I mean, that's really tragic because they were forced to close because of a huge rent increase. If I remember correctly, I think their rent was like raised from, I think, around $24,000 a month to $33,000 a month, and that was like back in 2006. So they couldn't absorb that kind of rent increase. Luckily, they are open again, but not on 2nd Avenue in the East Village. They have a location in Midtown and on the Upper East Side, but you can get their Jewish penicillin, which is their matzo ball soup.
That's one of the few there from the corner too.
Yes. We'll talk about that later, how our style of photography, but you can see this one's taken from the corner. Usually we take them straight on, but we're going to get to that in a minute. And here's another one, CBGB. I'll hold it up because I'm also wearing their shirt.
Hang on. Good.
And that, I mean, interestingly enough, we went to CBGB so many times and saw so many great bands, and we never thought to photograph it. So I think this photo, let's see, we always date them, 2005. So even though we lived in the neighborhood, we never thought to take a photo of it because we thought, hey, why take a photo? That's always going to be there. And one day we just said, you know what, let's take a photo of it. And then not too soon after, they too closed because of a rent increase. I mean, they lost their lease is what happened. So we can't stress like like in so many words that it's really, really, really important to document these places and support them while they're still around, because like if you wait till they close, like what good is it? Nobody wants to walk down a block that has like empty storefronts. And sadly, what we're seeing now with the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown is we've walked around the city and we've shot a lot of video, and you see like all these boarded up storefronts and like closed storefronts, like one after the other, after the other, after the other. And I mean, it breaks our heart because I mean, that's not a block that looks attractive to me, and it's certainly not a block that anybody else would want to walk down, let alone a tourist. And I mean, you know, we want them to come back. We want the mom and pop stores to open again. We want them to thrive. So the key to that is to help support them. A lot of you guys have wondered how we got interested and started to, you know, document these mom and pop stores and photograph them and interview the store owners. And it's kind of an interesting story because we were photographing like graffiti art in the late 1980s and 1880s, so that would be crazy. Late 1980s and 1990s.
That's old graffiti.
Yeah, that would be old graffiti. And that was like the era when the graffiti was starting to come off the trains, because like 1989 is the last time graffiti ran on a subway car. I mean, like the outside of the subway cars were all painted with graffiti, but that was when the last car ran like with graffiti on the outside. So it went from the trains to the wall. So that's when we started documenting in and around the city. And we were going like to a lot of different neighborhoods. Like even though we were living in the East Village, there was some graffiti in the East Village and Lower East Side, but we were really compelled to find like these big murals. And most of these big graffiti murals were painted like in the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. So we're going into all these outlying neighborhoods to document the graffiti. And the thing with graffiti is it's like a temporary art form. So it's like here today, gone tomorrow. So you had to like find it, document it. And this was all 35mm film because like it's way before like digital photography. And a lot of the graffiti artists themselves weren't taking pictures of their own artwork because they didn't have like a you know, film camera to do so. So we were just documenting, and at the same time we were like, because we were interested in graffiti, and graffiti is a letter-based art form, like, oh, that's Hudson. Hi. What is it, big boy? He's our helper. Okay. So graffiti, this is a letter-based art form. So it's all about like your tag, like your name, your tag, but it's about manipulating the letters and creating a style. So we were always looking at like lettering on the storefronts and like these big hand-painted signs, the big neon signs, like getting inspiration of like how did they manipulate the letters. So while we were documenting graffiti and going into like all these outer boroughs and Brooklyn and Queens and Bronx and even Staten Island, we were like always looking at the way like the lettering was on storefronts, and we were looking at their big hand-painted signs, the signs in the window, the big neon signs, overhanging signs, to see like how the letters were manipulated and looking at the style. And what happened was we would often go back to the same location, like the same block in the Bronx and the same block in Queens, because the graffiti artists would paint over the same wall again and again and again. So like maybe after a few months we'd go check in on it again, photograph their new artwork, and then we said, wait a minute, what happened to that little candy store that we went in across the street? Like it had a great hand-painted sign, and we went in and we got a pack of gum and like a soda, and we spoke with the owner for a minute or two, and she was really funny, and wait, it's gone. Like what happened to it? Somehow we like looked around and the neighborhood didn't look the same anymore. It didn't feel the same anymore. So we said, wait a minute, let's start documenting these little mom and pop stores in addition to documenting the graffiti, because we were always going out to these neighborhoods anyway. So that's what we started to do. And In the beginning, it was all with 35 millimeter film. In fact, we didn't get like a digital camera. I think our first digital camera, like we didn't get until like 2006. We were really like late in the game of jumping in to digital photography because we really love like the patina of the 35 millimeter, like the film, like that green, that I guess that intangible patina that you get with how a print, holding that print in your hand. We really, really loved it.
We still do.
Yeah, we still do. We still use 35 millimeter and like a medium format camera too. One of our favorites, we have an old Graflex, the Speed Graphic. And we just kept on documenting and collecting them, amassing a huge collection. Literally, they went into like shoe boxes. So that's kind of how our genesis began of like why we even became interested in photographing these mom and pop stores. And then what happened was we were putting together a graffiti book of like all these different graffiti murals called Broken Windows, Graffiti NYC. And I'll flip through it so I can just show you some of the big murals. This is what we were interested in documenting. So it wasn't really the vandalism side of graffiti. It was more these big, beautiful murals that often had like an underlying message behind them too. So here's another one. Oh, this one's a Freedom mural. This was created in the Freedom Tunnel, which is the big tunnel that runs like from 125th Street all the way, what is it, till 59th Street? Or,
yeah.
I forget where it ends, but it goes on for miles.
On the west side.
Right, on the west side, it's like underneath like Riverside Park and stuff. I mean, if you're walking along the park, you can see like these little grates, like vents from where the tunnel goes, and the graffiti artists often painted in there. Here's some more examples, just to give you an example of like the kind of artwork that we were interested in documenting. So we were going all around the city, finding these beautiful murals, and then at the same time, photographing the storefronts. So while we were putting together our first book on New York City graffiti, Broken Windows, that was like in late 2000 is when our editor came over our apartment, and we were trying to figure out like, okay, what photos are we going to use? What are we going to do? He was really helping us with the editing process. He noticed on our walls some framed prints of mom and pop stores, because we had like, how we showed you that big photo, the panorama of 2nd Avenue with Gem Spa on one end all the way to the other end of the block, which had the Love Saves the Day, which is like another sad store that was forced out of business because the landlord increased the rent. Anyway, we were going through our graffiti photos, and he's like, oh, what's that on your wall? And I'm like, oh, those are mom and pop stores, and you're not going to be interested in that, because he was from California. Like, this is published through Ginkgo Press, which is like independent publisher out of California. So I didn't think that like somebody from California would be interested in like a mom and pop store, because like when is he going to go to it? I mean, this is before really like online shopping and things like that, of course. And he's like, no, these are really cool. Do you have more? I'm like, oh, forget about it.
Boxes.
Yeah, I'm like, do you have more? Like, we have hundreds and hundreds of photos, and we have interviews with the store owners. And he's like, what? He's like, let me see more. So we showed it to them, and he's like, listen, guys, this should be your next project. You can keep on documenting graffiti, but really, I mean, I love the idea of documenting the mom and pop stores, especially that you interviewed the owner, because just like we did for graffiti, and this is our second graffiti book, Burning New York, we spoke with like all the graffiti artists. We interviewed them, and we kind of like found out like, hey, like, why did you choose your tag? Like, what motivates you to keep on painting? How did you get interested in graffiti in the first place? So we'd ask them all these questions. So we were kind of like used to interviewing people. So when we photographed the mom and pop stores, we did the same thing. We not only would photograph the store, but we would go inside and trying to find page with text, a lot of photos. There we go. There's some text. So we would go in and speak with the store owner and kind of find a brief history about the store. Like I said, like why was it still in business? Like was it, something that was in your family, passed down to generation? We would ask them all these pointed questions. And honestly, that's when the project really took off. It was speaking to the store owners and finding out like the interesting stories they had to share with us about like the joys and struggles of operating like an often family-owned business, and what was their secret like recipe was, secret sauce of why they were still in business, or like their favorite food that they make at the store, or whatever it was that they wanted to share with us. They were so happy, like really overjoyed. Like I mean, in the past, like maybe people had gone in and they had known their customers, but they were never asked such pointed questions, and we found that they really wanted to share with them with us. I mean, sometimes we spent hours with them, finding out like all this stuff, and we were, recording it. So when we told our publisher about that, he's like, guys, that's it. So honestly, that's what planted the seed like in our mind to keep photographing and documenting these stores, because we didn't do it to make a book or anything like that. We were just doing it because we loved it. Like we really loved like these mom and pop stores, and we really wanted to help them like stay in business. So that's why we were documenting them. We weren't sharing them, the photos with anybody. We were just like keeping it to ourselves, I guess you could say, because this was like before the internet, so we weren't sharing it with anybody. But I can thank our editor for like really pushing us further and saying, keep on doing it. So we kind of divided this workshop into 3 sections, but before we get started, I just want to let you know about the dedicated Instagram page that we created for this workshop and for your guys' photographs. It's at Mom and Pop Storefronts. And let me grab my phone and show you. So this is it, at Mom and Pop Storefronts. And what we're going to do is, after this workshop is completed, you're going to go out and photograph stores on your own. We're going to give you the tips and how in a minute, but then you're going to send us the photos, and we're going to put them up on the Mom and Pop Storefronts feed with the caption, like if you're able to interview the store. So it's at Mom and Pop Storefronts. That's going to be the dedicated Instagram feed for this
we'll put it down
workshop.
on the screen.
Yeah, we'll put the tag down on the screen as well. So yeah, let's get started. Now, as part of this workshop, in addition to the online component, the at Mom and Pop Storefronts, we hope, and this is all if, COVID-19 restrictions kind of like, get eased, that we can do this, but we're hope to have a free public workshop, maybe not free public exhibition at the Theater for the New City Gallery in the East Village, like later on in the fall. So, of course, we'll announce that as things get closer. Right now the place is closed because all theaters and schools and everything like that are closed because of coronavirus, but we'll keep you up to date on that. But we want to let you know that that's even a wider audience, because especially the Theater for the New City, it gets like hundreds of people every day. It's open every day, it's free, it's like a little community center, as well as having like 11 theaters in there.
Yeah, it's always fun. We get food and some beer and wine, and
yeah, we'll hopefully have
hopefully that's going to work out.
Right, have a free public reception where we'll have a little party. We'll, like James said, some free wine and beer and snacks. So we'll stay tuned for that.
Hudson will be there?
Yes, Hudson will be there as well. So the first part of this workshop is photographing storefronts. I want to give you not teach you how to take a photograph, but kind of give you tips and little insight in, because we've been doing this for so long, and how we take the photographs, like how to approach it and the best way to do that. And then the second part of this workshop tonight is to the social media component, because social media is super important. So we kind of want to give everyone our insight insight into how we created, a pretty popular Instagram account, because our @James and Carla Instagram has like nearly 44,000 followers, and we're a verified Instagram account. So we'll teach you, little basic stuff on that. And then the third component is about the oral histories. So like how to approach the store owners or managers or whoever you decide to interview, and the best way to do that, and the tips and like little insight that we have in doing that, because sometimes that's really difficult for a lot of people. So which,
Like me.
yeah, exactly. You could see I'm the talkative one. James is usually the one behind the camera, so it was definitely harder, exactly, harder for him to like open up and speak with the owners. But for me, that kind of came naturally. So yeah, let's get started with photographing the storefronts. I mean, first of all, what we did, and what's really, really important when you approach to take these storefront photos is kind of like to develop a style like to your photography. So one of the most important things for developing your own style of photography, just like we did, we have that very linear approach where we kind of like, you can see when you flip through our book that a lot of the storefront photos are taken pretty much straight on. So, whoop, not that one. I'll go back to that one in a second. But for the most part, they're very, very linear. So really, for us, it was all about photographing what you love, because when you photograph something that you love, like that really shines through in the photograph. I mean, we can't stress that enough, that if you just capture what you love, like the style will come later. So you just have to take lots and lots and lots of photos, because that's certainly what we did. And you can try different things like we did, like we photographed, say like this is Ting's Gift Shop, which is still in business in Chinatown. This is like at the corner of Crooked Doyer Street. And when we looked at that one, we're like, oh, well, that doesn't do it justice, because it's on this cool little corner. We'll have to like break our own style and photograph it from the corner, so like a non-linear approach. But for the most part, very, very, very straight on. So more examples of our very linear approach. And we just kept on photographing and photographing and photographing the stores. So you kind of create a collection. Like if you just keep on doing it, you'll amass a big collection. And then what we can do is try photographing different elements. So like this is Katz's Delicatessen. We photographed it during the day. So you don't have to only photograph the store during the day like we did for Katz's, but also you can try photographing things at night like we did here. In fact, we ended up, because we really love taking the photographs at night, especially of like the stores like Katz's that had beautiful neon, which really glowed beautifully at night. We ended up doing a whole book of these mom and pop stores, like with their neon signs glowing at night, or just like places that were bars or restaurants that really, primarily did their business at night. So it didn't really make sense to like photograph them during the day. They were like, night places. So you can, experiment with that as well. And then you can also just even hone in on the sign. Like say you really love Katz's, you can just take a picture of like this sign in this particular window, or this one, the Katz's That's All. They're like iconic with the little clock. So you don't have to take a picture of the whole storefront. You can just take a picture of an element, or even like go and do something that's in a shop window. Say like Aliba. Go in and look at all the different cheese that they're displaying in the window. So you really have like your creative freedom. We don't want to impose like, oh, you have to take a picture of this, or you have to take a picture of that. If you just take a picture of what like interests you and what you love and what you find fascinating, then that will make for a really, really great photo. So whether it's a storefront or just a sign or products in a window.
Could go inside.
Right, you can go inside as well. I mean, in our books, we don't have any, storefront photography inside because we wanted to let like the storefront be the shining star, like that be the star of the photo, but certainly you can go inside and photograph the inside as well. But if you do that, you have to be respectful and ask permission for, the store owner or the manager. Is it okay to take some interior photography? And it's like, that's something that we always did. Like, even when we took the picture of the storefront from the outside, you have like, it's within your right to just take a photo from the outside because you're standing on, public space like the sidewalk or the street. So you can feel free to take a picture of the storefront without asking the owner's permission. However, if you go inside and first introduce yourself and ask permission to even take photo of the outside of the store, it sets you up for like the third part of our workshop today of speaking with the owner, because if they already know what your intentions are, that you really love the store and that you're so excited to document it and take a picture of the outside, then they might be more than willing to speak to you when you come inside as well. So that's just like a little tip that we developed like from doing this for so many years, that it doesn't hurt to introduce yourself and ask permission to even take the exterior photography, although technically you do not need permission. You can just take a photo of the outside.
So you guys are going to actually take pictures of anything you want in the store.
Right. So you have the creative freedom with this workshop, and then, our online exhibition and our free public exhibition where we'll be printing your photos. Hopefully we'll get a sponsor. We have in the past gotten a sponsor where they donate the prints. So they print it out on beautiful, like 11 by 14 inch nice stock paper, and they even mounted it for us so that we can, hang it at the gallery. So, of course we'll get into that later, but that's the goal, for you to go out and photograph all the stores that you are interested in, whether they're ones like affected by COVID that you feel like, oh my God, I really want to help support this one, or whether it's a Black-owned business, because, that's an important thing that's been going on now too. We want to, support with Black Lives Matter, that you can support some Black-owned businesses, whatever is near and dear to your heart.
And whatever element to the store.
Right, and whatever element. Doesn't have to be the whole store. It can be just the storefront sign. It can just be a product in the window.
A scale.
It could be inside, like, a piece of meat that you buy from the butcher shop, or even a piece of candy, an egg cream that you get from a place, like a little luncheonette, or something that you eat for lunch. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. There's like no rules. That's the beauty of photography to us. When you photograph what interests you, what you are interested in, it will shine through in your photo. So the most important thing, besides like just taking lots and lots of photos and trying to develop your own style, is to take the photo when you find the storefront, or whatever it is that interests you, whether it's a sign or a product in the window, because you can't always count on that you can come back to it and photograph it another day. This is something that we learned like the hard way, because back when we were using just our 35mm camera, I mean, sometimes we didn't have the camera with us, or we'd run out of film and we didn't have an extra, roll of film with us, and we'd see a store and we're like, oh my God, damn, okay, we can't get it today. We'll write it down. Like, often I would like write it on a little scrap of paper and I'd put it in a pocket, and honestly, like, I'd forget about it. Like, I'd do wash and then I'd forget, like, oh, what did this little note say? Like, I can't even read it anymore because I washed the piece of, paper and the ink got all runny, and I'm like, oh wait, maybe it was a store that we said we wanted to photograph and go back to. Like, I'd write down the address.
Yeah, you had all these little notebooks.
Yeah, I would carry around a little notebook with me, and I'd like, okay, go back to, like there was a big truck parked in front of it or something that I couldn't take the photo. So we can't stress enough. Take the photo when you see it. If you can't get the whole store because like there's a big truck parked in front of it, then just take a picture of a sign or something, just so you have it, because it may not be there tomorrow. I mean, especially now because of the coronavirus pandemic, things are sadly closing. I mean, this is another store, sadly, that we lost, Bleecker Street Records, again, because of a rent increase. So it's like here today, gone tomorrow. It's like you have to think of stores as possibly being temporary. So you want to document them when you see them and when you capture them. I mean, we can't stress that enough. And it doesn't matter if it's just with your cell phone cameras. Like cell phone cameras, I mean, they're great, especially like newer phones, but even older phones, like they're pretty decent. So take like with whatever you got. I mean, when we started out, I mean, we're self-taught photographers. Like we never took like a photography class or anything. Like everything we did was trial and error, but we didn't have like an expensive camera. I mean, like we started with like a fairly like beginner level 35 millimeter camera. I mean, as we got like more advanced, we invested and we got better photographic equipment, but that's, I would say, primarily like this, the storefront book. I think we took it with like a Canon EOS Elan 7NE, if I remember correctly. That was the Canon. We started out with like a Rebel, which was like their least expensive 35 millimeter, and then we got the Elan, which was like, I guess they call it like the advanced amateur or something like that.
Now we have the 1V, the only one.
Yeah, we have like, then we've like over the years upgraded, and we have the last film camera that Canon ever made, which is the 1V, which is like, really, really, really heavy. I mean, like we've dropped the thing and nothing ever happens to it, but it's like a real workhorse. But you can use whatever you want. Like, don't feel like, oh my God, I'm only using a cell phone camera, because they're like honestly really fantastic. Well, or an old point and shoot. It doesn't matter. For the purposes of this workshop, just send us what you have, but send us so we can, post it at the highest resolution that you have. So meaning if you're taking it with your cell phone, like don't say when you attach it to like an email, or if you're going to put it in a Dropbox or WeTransfer, attach the largest file that your camera took, because when we go to print these, like for hopefully our public, exhibition, we're going to need the largest file. For posting it on Instagram, technically we don't need a super huge file, but for printing them, we do. So send us your largest file. So always keep it on the largest camera setting. And yeah, just keep on taking the photos, and like I said, don't forget, take it when you see it. We can't stress that enough. So another thing we wanted to talk about, for this workshop, we're not teaching you like how to use a 35 millimeter camera or a digital single lens reflex, which is primarily what we use now for our photography business.
Or what lenses
or lenses or anything like that. All those technical questions, if you do have technical questions of like what we use and like what lenses we use and things like that, we'll be happy to answer them, but email them to us. We're going to put our email at the bottom of the screen so you can email us, and and we can answer some of those things like on our YouTube Live, but we'll actually want to keep more of those questions for YouTube Live for more of like the related to the workshop. So technical camera stuff, we're happy to help and share our knowledge, but let's do that not in this workshop. This is primarily
because the skill, like what people have, is so varied.
Right, exactly, because we don't know what kind of camera you have or what you want. So you tell us, and then we'll be happy to answer it. But what we really wanted to say was just keep on taking the photos, and don't be like, oh my God, they're not good enough or anything like that. Like I said, we are self-taught photographers. Like we learn by trial and error. Literally, we took lots and lots of photos, and because we were using 35 millimeter, we would get them developed, and then we would look at them and we're like, oh my God, like this looks like crap, like it's garbage. But then we would be like, wait, why is this photo good and this photo not look good? Like we would examine them and we would try to like learn from our mistakes. Like, oh, maybe we could have composed it better. Maybe like we could have used better lighting. So all those things, like you really have to experiment. Even with the cell phone camera, like you can use different filters and have fun with that. Just have fun with whatever you're using, and don't worry about whether, it's good enough, because, you really are your own worst critic. what we did, like because we were shooting graffiti like in the 1980s and 90s, it's like we would go into these subway tunnels and it'd be really, really dark, like hardly any light at all. And then we'd come back and we'd look at our photos and we're like, oh my God, like what is this? We don't even know what we're doing, because like we were taking things on like the so-called green mode. And then we learned, we're like, wait a minute, the camera has all these settings on it. Like what is all this stuff? So it was like we would turn the knob and we'd be like, oh, what's this manual exposure? Like what is exposure? Like what is...
It's like hidden power.
Right, what is an f-stop? Like it's like, you know, playing a video game and like unlocking that upper level of...
Hidden powers.
Yeah, hidden powers and stuff like that. So just feel free to like learn from your mistakes. Oh, looks like Hudson has the zoomies. Hi, Huds! And so yeah, we were just going into all these different situations, like low level light, and also like kind of shooting like at a fast pace. Like for us, when we take a storefront photo, we know exactly like how we want to frame it, what we want to do. Like we can just size it up just because we've done it so much. Like we've taken literally thousands and thousands of storefront photos. We can just like look at a storefront and just say, okay, this is how we're gonna photograph it. Like it just comes natural, but that, you know, you'll develop on your own. So now I'm going to start like segging into our social media segment of this workshop, because like I said, when you just keep on collecting storefront photo after storefront photo, whether it's the interior, exterior, or signage, just keep on amassing them, you'll create your own style, because that's what's really important for social media, for Instagram in particular. That one of the reasons that I think that our, you know, Instagram account at James and Carla stands out from all the rest is we have a very distinct style, and like we kind of curate what we're going to post every single day, and we make sure it like fits within the message that we're trying to get across. For us, it's all about like the mom and pop stores, so we try to keep it related to the storefront. So when you have a distinct style and someone like goes on your page and they scroll through and they can see like row after row after row of whatever you have photographed, and it kind of like they all go with one another, then your page looks attractive. So it's something that somebody wants to follow. And like when we first started posting on social media on our Instagram, like, you know, we were putting up a storefront photo, but then we'd have a picture of our dog, or you know, a picture of like a, you know, a little picture of a meal we ate, like nothing, you know, professionally done, just done really quickly. It was kind of like all haphazard looking, and it really wasn't like giving that uniform look and feel. So I can't stress like how important that is for social media, for people to be interested in your account. It has to be like really, really, really curated.
One glance and they know what it's about.
Exactly. That's what you want to create. You want them to look at your feed and say, hey, this is interesting. Like, look at all these storefront photos, or look at all these photos of signs, or look at all these photos of food, or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter like what you decide to focus on, but that distinct style and that distinct way of presenting it is super, super, super important. Also, what's important is Instagram stories. I mean, in addition to posting on your main feed, the Instagram stories really, really help, because you can use it as like a way to like give, like say maybe some backstory to a photo, or like cuts that didn't make it into your main part of the feed, you can put in your Instagram story. That's what we do. And also because now we have a business account, we can also put a link to, you know, like a swipe to a video or something else that we created. So that's really important, to use the Instagram stories as another tool. Another thing is hashtags. Like I can't stress like how important it is to use hashtags with whatever photo that you're putting up on Instagram. Because at first, like we weren't really using hashtags, but people search through like say they're interested in a certain topic, they'll put that hashtag and then they'll see what comes up in their feed. And that can really get you like highlighted or spotted by someone that maybe ordinarily wouldn't find your feed, or wouldn't come up like, you know, as a feed that they were interested in and explore or something like that through Instagram. So using hashtags, and you can use 30, you can either put them in the caption of your photograph, or you can put them in a comment. And usually now, I mean, we started by putting them in as part of the caption. Usually now I put them as a comment because that way I can keep everything more clean as far as the caption. Because that's something that's super important too, the captions. But we're going to get in that in a second. So posts with hashtags get 12.6 more engagement than a post without hashtags. So that's super important. Another thing is important is to caption your photo. And what I mean by that is, like, a lot of people will put up their photo on Instagram, but then they don't really say anything afterwards. Or maybe their caption will be the hashtags, but that's not enough. In order for people to be really engaged with your feed, you can just write a short caption like we do on our feed at James and Carla. You can see, we'll give a brief history about the store, maybe say, okay, this store has been in business since, 1908 or whatever it is. And then we'll maybe briefly talk about a store owner or something like that. Or say, okay, this is what they're known for. This store is known for their homemade mozzarella or whatever it is. So we just briefly write like maybe a few sentences. Not like, a novel. I mean, you don't have that many characters to use with Instagram, but, using a lengthy description isn't necessary. Just a few sentences brief to get your point across. But we can't stress that enough, to definitely caption your photo. So we can't stress enough for the second part of this workshop the importance of social media, especially in helping support mom and pop stores. We can't stress how important it is that when you put something up on social media, the power of social media can't be underestimated, because we have personally helped many stores, like in fundraising and things like that, when they were not doing well, by posting on our social media, because it really helps to get the word out. I mean, at first we weren't interested in like Instagram and things like that. We were kind of late to the game. I don't think we really got into posting on Instagram until like 2015. And, slowly but slowly we built our following, and now, 2015, almost like 5 followers or whatever it was. And now we have nearly 44,000 followers, and we didn't buy any of them. It's all pure organic people that are just interested in what we have to say.
Right.
So yeah, spreading that message through social media, and for the purpose of this workshop, we can't stress it enough. It's just another way of social advocacy. I mean, this is
books will only get you so far now.
Right, like our storefront books, they're wonderful. But, I mean, not everybody owns a book or wants to own a book or can own a book. I mean, our books are available at the New York Public Library, so they're free to take out. I mean, of course, the libraries are closed now, but hopefully they'll be reopening, after the COVID restrictions. But, the books only get you so far. It's social media that can really reach a wider audience. And really,
the immediacy, too.
Right. The goal with this workshop is to try to help and support these mom and pop stores, because they need our help more than ever. So through the power of social media, I mean, I really feel like, it makes a big difference. And that's why I'm going to lead into the third part of this workshop, is about obtaining an oral history. So let's talk about the oral history now, because talking to the store owners, I mean, that's something that we did early on in the project. And honestly, to us, the stories that we got, speaking with the owners, they became as important, if not more important, than the photo themselves. Because certainly when we began the project, when we were photographing these mom and pop stores, it was all very, very visually oriented. It was all about how the storefront looked and what attracted us to it in the first place, the interesting signage,
the aesthetics,
the aesthetics, why we photographed this Ralph's. I mean, it was because we're wow, look at this font, look at that S, it's so incredible. It looked like a little Elsa Peretti heart. So for this one, for sure, it wasn't speaking to the owner, it was that exterior of the store. But say this one, and this is why we chose it. Here, let me grab a book that doesn't have that dust jacket on there. This is Katie's Candy, speaking to the Katie Kaiser, who owned Katie's Candy. This was in Bed-Stuy. This was on Tompkins Avenue, and I mean, it was an incredible little candy store. And when we went in there in like 2003 and first spoke with Katie, we were just blown away by her story, because I mean, we're gonna tell you the story and give you verbatim of what it was, but basically, to sum it up, she was like the quintessential New Yorker with this gravelly, like 12-pack-a-day cigarette voice, like, and while we were there speaking to her, like all these neighborhood people come in and, Katie, are you okay? And checking on her, and like we could see that she genuinely cared like about her neighborhood, and the neighborhood cared about her back. So, getting these storefront interviews like with the owners was, incredibly important. So interviewing the store owner, to us, like I said, it was just as important, if not more important, than the photograph of the store itself. And now I'm going to kind of just share with you like a little bit of tips and like how we went and would interview these owners, because I know that a lot of photographers, like James included, they're more comfortable like behind the camera. They're not as comfortable like coming out from behind the camera and speaking with the owner. So, I mean, some of you may be very, very comfortable speaking, maybe have a background in videography, but a lot of you may not. So these are just like basic things that like maybe to some people that are more advanced as far as their interview capabilities, they may say, okay, I know all this, but for a lot of you, it might be really insightful. Number one, what we would do is, if we knew we were going to approach a certain storefront owner, if we like saw the storefront from the outside, what you can do nowadays, if this was difficult when we were photographing them back in the 90s and early 2000s, is you can look up on your phone like a little bit of the history of the store. So that way, when you go inside and ask to speak to the owner, you have like a basic framework of like the questions that you might want to ask. Like, what year has this been in business? Like, you already know the answer, but this is like a segue to like kind of warm up. Or you can say, oh, hey, I heard your business has been around since 1908. What has kept it going all this time? So knowing this little bit of background history about it will help you like frame in your mind questions that when you go inside, you're not like floundering around of what to ask. So you kind of have it in your mind. Not that you need to like follow like a list of questions. I mean, sometimes it's really great, like especially if you've introduced yourself to the store owner already, but say like they can't talk to you at that moment and you're going to go back, then have it all prepared in your mind. Like, it's great to have a list of questions ahead of time, so then when you go back, you can like kind of use that as the framework of the interview. So that way you're not like off on a tangent. I mean, for me, I am like really talkative, as you can see, and I learned early on that like having this framework kept me in check, so I wouldn't just go off on something that like was totally unrelated. Also, to not interrupt. That was definitely my big problem in the beginning, is that I would conduct these interviews and then I would get so excited about what they were saying that I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that, and like I would just totally interrupt the store owner and I'd ruin the conversation because I'd ruin the flow. And like oftentimes I'd listen back to the interview and I'd be like, oh, wait a minute, he never even answered the question because I rudely interrupted, not realizing it because I was just so excited. But letting them talk and letting them answer the question, or in other words, like letting them speak about whatever they want to talk about, is the way to go. Just keep on letting them speak. And then if they go off on a tangent, you can, interrupt and just say, hey, what about this? Getting back to what you were saying before. That's fine to do too. Also, you kind of have to be respectful of the environment, because you have to remember when you're going in a store, like and the store is open and people are coming in, that, you might have to wait, for a customer. The phone can ring, or, any number of things can go on. So you just have to have a lot of time and a lot of patience. That's definitely key for us.
Don't go at lunch.
Yeah, don't go with their busy time and expect to do, like a full interview. You can ask them when you go in, hey, doing this workshop project where we're trying to help support mom and pop businesses, explain your reasoning for asking these questions, explain what you're going to be doing with the interview, and whether you're going to be recording it, like whether you're going to be taking a video or not. Because at first, in the beginning, when we were documenting the mom and pop stores, we were not videoing it because we felt like we would go in there and we had like a video camera and they would be like, oh my God, no, video, I want to fix my hair and I want to change my clothes. And they kind of like would change their whole like not attitude, but in a way, yes, like they kind of clammed up, like they weren't seemingly as open. So we initially like abandoned the video and we just recorded like with this little micro cassette recorder. I mean, now of course we just use like the recording device on our cell phone and like we just have it just we ask them, are you comfortable having the camera on you as well? But if they're not, we'll just use the audio component. So that way you can get the interview without the video. But video is fabulous if you can. I mean, for the purposes of this workshop and posting your photos on Instagram, we can use a short video clip. It has to be under a minute so we can post it. And we're happy to do that. For the exhibition that we'll be having, hopefully at the Theater for the New City Gallery, we're going to concentrate on your photograph and the interview. So what you can do, even if you're using a video, is transcribe it so that we can put up like a paragraph or 2 or 3. Like we'll probably use like what we call the gem of the interview, which means like what would really get the point across of like what this store represents. Like maybe it's like them talking about what their specialty is, or maybe it's them talking about how they got involved in this family business, or whatever it is, that little like gem of the story. That's what we'll print to accompany your photograph for the exhibition, and certainly what text we can use for Instagram for the caption as well. But if you feel comfortable using a video, like we've now have, obviously have this YouTube channel, we feel very comfortable videoing the, store owners. You always have to ask permission first and make sure that they feel comfortable with the video. So another thing that we found really great for structuring the interview questions is to try to ask questions that don't elicit a yes or no answer, because those are boring. Like just the store owner saying, no, yes, and oh, do you like working here? Yes. I mean, that's boring. You want to structure it instead of saying something like, if you know that the business has survived since 1894, you can say, what do you think is the key to your survival? Like, why has your business survived since 1894? Instead of just saying, okay, have you been in business since 1894? That just gets you one little piece of information. When you structure the question in such a form that they'll have to answer with a longer kind of answer, it will get you a lot more information. And then you might find out more pieces of information and like more questions to ask based upon what they say. So you have to kind of like listen along and just be like, oh, wait a minute, that's really cool. Like, let's ask a question about that. So then you can do a follow-up question based upon whatever involved answer they gave in the first question. I hope this is helping. Anybody, again, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, email us and we'll be happy to answer them, because this is a private video, so you're not going to be able to leave comments on it. But please email us or message us through Instagram, whatever is easier for you, and we'll be sure to answer them.
You have to go there. You can't just email them.
Right. That's another thing, and I wanted to talk about that with the coronavirus restrictions, because not all stores are open yet. Yes, it might be difficult initially to go inside and speak to the owner, because certainly what we found is just calling somebody up on the phone, you're not going to get like the same quality interview as you are doing it face to face.
Or email, God forbid.
Right, or email is even worse. Like I don't think I've ever conducted done an interview via email. If I can't for whatever reason, through health reasons or something like that, if the owner is totally not available to speak with on camera in person, then yes, conducting a phone interview would be second best, but I would never ever do it through an email unless the person is like very comfortable. I mean, maybe they're a writer themselves or something and they really want to think about the answers to the questions, but generally I would say do it in person because that's when you're going to get the best interview. So we wanted to give you a great example of the interview that we did with Katie Kaiser, the owner of Katie's Candy Store. So I'm just going to briefly read it to you because it just personifies everything about this candy store. My store is the last of the penny candy stores in New York. I still sell candy for a penny, and I even sell CNC colas for 25 cents. I keep my prices low by buying everything in bulk. The colas I buy in cases of 100, and the candy I buy pounds and pounds of each variety. My most popular selling items are my 10 different flavors of Tootsie Rolls, including pink lemonade and the new cola flavor. I never had those. I've only had like the regular Tootsie Rolls, by the way. I also sell balloons because I supply a lot of candy for parties and to fill piñatas. I'm known around here as the dinosaur of Tompkins because I've been open for so long. I was born and raised in this Bed-Stuy neighborhood, and I've seen a lot of changes. I was here when it was all Jewish and Italian, and when it changed to Spanish and black. I've been through the dope, crack, and everything else this neighborhood has thrown at me. I speak 3 languages, English, Spanish, and mother effer. I won't say the word, but she said it. You've got to be tough to survive around here in this neighborhood. I've been robbed quite a few times, but I've never been hurt. One time, the robbers tied me up, but they didn't hurt me because I knew who they were. They were from around the neighborhood. I tried to talk some sense into them guys. It's like a phase they go through to show that they're bigger and badder than the next guy. They thought I'd put up a fight, but I can't be bothered with that anymore. But they wound up letting me go because I told them that I was going to tell their mother what they did to me and that they would get in more trouble from their mother than anything else. So they ended up letting me go. But despite all that, I've stayed here and I plan to stay here until they force me out. This is home to me. I've lived around the corner for 44 years and I was born and raised on this corner of Tompkins and Lafayette Street. Unfortunately, I'll have to close this store in 2009 when my lease expires because a new owner bought the building and wants to raise the rent real high. I sell penny candy and I can't afford to pay $2,350 a month plus electric and everything else he wants. The landlord wants to convert the whole building into a luxury type apartment and empty, me out of this storefront. And really, the whole area is empty of stores except for mine right now. They bought everybody out. They offered me $5,000 to move, and I refused. I told them, no way. I have more than that in inventory and candy right here. So in 2009, after 40 years of business, I'll be forced to close, and the kids in the neighborhood won't have this place to buy penny candy anymore. And that was Catherine Kaiser, aka Katie. And sadly, as a note, she actually was forced to close in 2007. They forced her out even earlier than her lease was up. And the sad thing is number one, if you go there today in 2020, the storefront is still empty. Like their big plans of a luxury condo for the building never surfaced. The building looks exactly the same and the storefront is empty, which is terrible. On top of that, we kept in touch with Katie and her family because we spent so much time like interviewing these store owners and photographing their store inside and out that we became like friends with them. I mean, they became like an extended part of our family. And Katie's son got in touch with us in late 2007. And he told us, listen, Katie just passed away. And we were like, oh, what happened? Because the last time that we had spoken with her, she seemed, pretty healthy. And he's like, listen, losing the store, being forced to close the store, just she had no more will to live. Like she got this infection. I mean, maybe it was like similar to like a COVID infection, who knows? But she got this infection, she went into the hospital, and she just passed away. Like she just didn't have the will to live. She didn't fight, to survive. alive. She just had lost it all because the store was everything to her. And like hearing that, honestly, it broke her heart because we wondered like if the landlord hadn't been so greedy and just let her stay, that maybe she would be alive and maybe she would be alive today. And then the store would still be in business and the block wouldn't look so downtrodden because all these empty storefronts, like I said earlier, that doesn't make a neighborhood look attractive. Like nobody wants to walk down a street that has like empty stores. So it's like tragic in so many ways. So I just wanted to share with you that little, interview because it really summed up like the project and everything for us. So another story that we want to share with you with an interview with the store owner, this appears in our Storefront 2, a history preserved book, is E&N Pet Paradise. And that's in the Norwood neighborhood of the Bronx. And we interviewed the owner, Augie. So I'm going to share with you that interview. And here it goes. It's a funny story how I got started in this business. I was working in a clothing store in Manhattan and taking the bus home to the Bronx when I passed by this pet store. I noticed a sign in the store's window that said for sale. I'd just gotten married and between my wife and I, we had saved $5,000 to buy a house for ourselves. I got off the bus and went inside the store and the owner who was selling the business told me he was asking $5,000 for the shop. So I went home and got the $5,000 and bought the store. And that was like the money that my wife and I had saved to buy a house. So I called up my wife and I said, listen, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is that I bought a business, but the bad news is that we don't have any money left anymore to buy a house. And my family was really angry at me. They thought I was crazy, that I was throwing away my money. They thought I would never make it. And the big reason was, at that time, in the early 1970s, and that's when Augie bought the store, the neighborhood was primarily Irish and Jewish. Many people lived here were prejudiced towards Puerto Ricans. My family thought that people from this neighborhood would never ever buy any pets from me because I was Puerto Rican. But when I opened my store, my wife was with me every single day. She has red hair and green eyes and light skin and really doesn't look Puerto Rican at all. So all the customers thought that she was the owner and that I was just hired help, and that was just fine with me. The previous owner had sold mostly dog and cat supplies, but I didn't want to concentrate on that end of the business. Instead, I changed the entire inventory to mostly tropical fish and birds because those were the animals that I knew the best. I took a big risk in changing the inventory, but because I spent so much time in Puerto Rico as a young child, I really loved fish and birds. Every summer, my parents would send me to Puerto Rico to visit my grandfather because I was kind of a troublemaker in school. They thought by sending me to Puerto Rico, it would help straighten me out. My grandfather had a big piece of land and raised pigs and had many fish and birds as pets. He taught me how to take care of all the animals, and I really loved doing it. I also donate a lot of time and money to help the community. I go to the local nursing home and hospital and help them set up fish tanks for free. And I also just do it because I like to see the patients enjoying some beautiful fish. I even go there to clean the tanks weekly for them for free. My daughter teaches autistic children and often brings her kids on field trips to my pet store so they can spend some time with the animals. For them, it's better than going to the Bronx Zoo because it's free, and they get to each personally interact with the animals that I have here. It makes the kids so happy, and I give each of them a goldfish to keep for their own. My customers appreciate all that I do for the community. It's like, to me, this store is like a little ad hoc community center. They know when they buy a fish or a bird from Augie that he'll stand behind what he sells. So this is Augie talking again. I really love all the animals I sell here, and I take very good care of them. I even come into the store on holidays and my days off just to feed everybody and make sure they're okay. That is why my pet store has been so successful. One guy was in here the other day and just bought a large tank from Pet Store at the mall and wanted to fill it with fish. I told him that he couldn't buy any fish yet for the tank because he'll end up killing them all since the water wasn't acclimated yet for them. He was really upset because he really wanted to buy fish right away, but I convinced him to wait. He was in the store for a few hours and left with nothing. I took a risk because maybe he would never come back or ever buy anything from me. But 3 days later, he came back, and I was so happy that he did, and he was happy that I had told him to wait. My family now wants me to retire, but I won't. I love my animals too much and can't bear the thought of leaving them to somebody else. It's different when I sell a fish or a bird to a customer because I've spent so much time with them, I know that they'll take good care of their new pets. That's Edgar Augie Santana, the owner. And to us, it just really sums up everything, why these little mom and pop stores are so important to the community. Just like Augie, he gives back, and it's just really everything. So we hope you guys get a good sense of the interview process. You can also see a lot of the interviews we've done with the owners on our YouTube channel, because we've highlighted many small businesses, especially like in the time of COVID-19. Like we went into Sarita's Mac and Cheese, and we talked to the owner Sarita about the struggles of converting her business really to more of like a takeaway and delivery model versus like eating inside. And we spoke with the owner of Zaragoza Mexican Deli in the East Village. Really, that's a beautiful family-run little place. It looks like a bodega from the outside, but they actually make homemade Mexican food every day. We spoke with them. I mean, there's countless examples of like how we approach it and what we do. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us. We want you to, because we're going to be answering questions in our Instagram live session. So you can mail us some questions. We'll talk about them, but we'll also answer questions in Instagram live on our next session. And also send us any photos, because this is what we want you to do now, is go out, photograph whatever stores interest you, the outside, the inside. I mean, if you don't, have a chance to interview them now, don't worry. Just send us the photos, because we can always help you at a later date with obtaining the interview. But if you have that too, just send that, and we'll go over all of your submissions, like your photos and interviews, in our next session of the Instagram, the YouTube live. Sorry, YouTube live. I don't know why I keep on saying Instagram, but yeah, keep on sending us stuff, and yeah, we'll put the link to our email below. And hope you guys enjoyed our workshop. This is the first time we're doing it virtually, so there may be a little bit of snafus, but I think it was extra good.